Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I would like to do something a little different and just sit here in my office and discuss subjects that's really near and dear to my heart. It's very much related to this channel, and what it is how to eat as an environmentalist. And basically kind of late in life I learned that the way you eat is probably the single best way that each of us as individuals can do something that can become empowered and actually make a difference to help protect our earth and protect the environment. Um, I'm 66 years old, and I only began eating in a way that's truly helpful and protective of the Earth's environment about 3 years ago when I was about 63. It's been probably the best decision I've ever made in my life, to be honest with you, because it just turns out that not only is it better for the environment, it's better for my internal environment, if you will, my gut microbiome, my body, my health. And I have just found just a super boost in my health and my energy, my well-being in the last 3 years since I started eating this way. So it's kind of amazing. It's better for the environment, and that means all environments. Okay, it's better for my yard. It's better for my internal gut microbiome. It's better for my region to support pollinators and bees and butterflies here in Florida where we grow our food forest. And it's better for the world, actually, because it turns out my carbon footprint is only a small fraction of what the average person's is, simply because of what I eat. So let's get into that, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. So I guess you could talk about what you eat in terms of, or how you eat. You could talk about that in terms of what you eat and what you don't eat, right? So let's start with what we should eat if we want to be good environmentalists. Well, we should eat locally grown food, right? You've probably heard this before. Food that's been trucked thousands of miles, that takes a lot of energy, it emits a lot of greenhouse gases, and it's not good for the environment, it's not good for our planet. So try to eat locally grown food when you can. Here in Florida, there's a lot of food that's grown, especially down around Homestead. There's quite a bit of tomatoes, a lot of strawberries are grown here in Florida, peanuts, and there's wherever you happen to live, there should be some foods that are grown close to you. But if you can do as much shopping as possible at your farmers markets, maybe join a community-supported agriculture, a CSA, locally in your area. That's a great way to eat locally grown food. And of course, growing your own food in your own yard, right? In your own backyard like we do. We have our food forest here. And we have over 70 different edible plants growing in our food forest. And so we lean into that. And it doesn't get much more local than that, in your own backyard, right? Furthermore, not just locally grown food, but organically grown food, right? Food that doesn't involve any chemicals. No pesticides, no herbicides, no fossil fuel-based fertilizers. That's been in the news, right? With the Strait of Hormuz, the fact that the fertilizers have been impacted because they come from petroleum. But we don't use any of that, and our food grows wonderfully well. So if you grow food in such a way that it actually, rather than trying to attack and kill bugs and pests, you just grow it in a natural ecosystem, right? That actually supports all of nature. It supports a healthy ecosystem of organisms, including all the pollinators and the birds and the squirrels and the lizards and frogs and everybody wins, right? And you get food. That's the way to help nature. That's the way to eat in such a way that you're helping nature. And so organic vegetable gardens, that's a good step in the right direction. But I've learned through all my years of gardening that you can go a step further. Sure, you can have an organic annual vegetable bed and you can fertilize that with some animal manure, and that's organic, right? Well, with our food forest system here, we don't have to use any domestic animals. We don't have to use the manure from any domestic animals. We don't need chickens. We don't need anything. We're relying on the mycorrhizal fungi and the natural recycling of nutrients and the way forest ecosystems operate in nature. And we're just figuring out how to tweak that towards a forest that produces food that we can eat and also that's available for nature. That's even better than an organic annual vegetable bed. With organic vegetable beds, you've got to keep replanting every year. You're disturbing the soil every year. You've got to find outside inputs that you got to keep pumping into that soil because annuals need such richer soil than perennials need. Perennials do great on just a slow, steady feed of nutrients. They don't need a big, giant pulse of nutrients like annual vegetables need. So that's why we lean into the perennials and the food forest type ecosystem instead of annual vegetable beds. So eat food as much as you can from food forests. Eat local food. Certainly eat at least organic food that doesn't have chemicals and pesticides and chemical fertilizers. I'll get back into other things that you should eat as a good environmentalist after this next section. Let's go ahead and get into the things that I don't eat anymore, and it's been the most wonderful change to my life. I became a vegan. I don't eat meat, and I don't miss it. And let me tell you, for 63 years of my life, I ate it all. You name it. Steak, pork ribs, barbecue, steak and lobster, bacon, all of it. All the sausages and cold cuts and Popeye's fried chicken. It's one of my favorite places. Eggs all the time. I ate that stuff for 63 years. The thing is, I began noticing health problems. I was having some bad health. I wouldn't say bad health problems because I know a lot of people have had much worse than what I had. But to me, it was bad that I was having to catch my breath just to walk up a little hill. And I was losing breath. My heart was pounding in my chest, right? I was having digestive issues a lot, upset stomach a lot, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, and the rest of it. I was noticing all these problems like most people have. And I'm not going to lie here. It surprised me because I didn't think it was going to be like this. But when I cut out all the meat, all the dairy, actually I had cut out dairy quite a bit years earlier because lactose intolerance. Most people on earth are lactose intolerant because we're not really supposed to be drinking the milk from another animal. That's not natural. And but I had cut that out years before. And the seafood industry just wrecks our oceans, just pollutes our oceans with so much garbage and junk and crap. All the garbage that's floating around out there in the ocean, a large percent of it comes from the seafood industry, unfortunately. And our oceans are just being decimated. I don't eat seafood anymore. Don't eat any of it. I got it down to where I was only eating some shellfish, some mussels, that sort of thing. But not anymore. I don't eat any of it. So I'm now down to the point where I don't put anything in my body except plants and mushrooms. And furthermore, it's only whole plants and whole food, whole foods at that too. I don't eat processed foods either. So let's talk about why this is better for the environment when you only eat plants and no animals. Um, and many of you may be thinking, well, I don't eat animals from the animal agriculture industry. I eat my own animals that I have here on my farm or in my backyard, my chickens. Um, well, that's a good step in a better direction at least, but there's still a basic problem. You know, when you look into biology and food chains, there's a thing that's called trophic levels, right? And the primary productivity is the sunlight coming down to the earth and photosynthesizing with the plants, and that's primary production. Those plants are producing biological life forms from non-biological energy, the energy of the sun. Primary production. That's the first level. The first trophic level is those organisms that feed on those plants. They're at the first trophic level. That's where I'm at now as a vegan. When you eat animals, you're now moving up to an organism that eats at the first trophic level. But now you're eating that animal. So that animal, his body exists because of the energy that came from the primary productivity. So now that animal's at a second trophic level. When you eat that animal, you're consuming, the calories that you consume require 10 times more energy to produce than if you just eat plants. Okay? So if you eat beef, just like I did for over 60 years, you're eating an animal that, let's say the animal ended up reaching, I'm not an expert on beef, but 1,000 pounds for a cow. So basically that cow went through 10,000 pounds, more or less, of grass and feed in order to produce a 1,000 pound animal that you then eat. I'm just doing rough numbers here, but this is about where it's at. It's about a factor of 10 for each trophic level. And if you eat an animal that eats other animals, you're going up to a third trophic level. Okay, so if you eat, grouper, a lot of the seafood is at third, even fourth and fifth trophic levels. Okay, and each trophic level up is 10 times more productivity required to create that food source. Okay, so the animal agriculture industry worldwide actually is the second largest, and by some people's counts, the largest source of greenhouse gases. Okay, 26% is an often cited number. That's how much of the greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, man-made, come from animal agriculture. Now, if you drive a gas car and you want to drive an electric car to help with greenhouse gases, that's a big time investment. That costs a lot of money. I do drive a hybrid vehicle, and it's a good step in the right direction because I'm getting almost 40 miles per gallon. That's better than 15 miles per gallon in a pickup truck or something. But not everybody can afford to do that, or maybe it's not time to do that. Maybe you get several more years out of your vehicle before you're ready to make that change. But there's something you can do today, and it starts making a difference right now, and that is to stop eating meat. There's a lot of noise out there about how you need your protein from meat. Not true. I'm here to tell you, argue with me all you want. Just look it up. Do your research. Don't listen to all the propaganda that's out there, mostly coming from the agriculture industry, the animal ag industry, and the dairy industries. It's not true. Scientific study after scientific study have proven it so. I'm going to give y'all some resources here you can check so that you can see for yourself what I'm talking about here. But so yeah, 26% of the greenhouse gases. So basically, a vegan like me now, and I wish I had done this so long ago. But a vegan like me, it takes 4 of us vegans to have the same carbon footprint as one person eating a non-vegan diet. You know, what's called the SAD diet, SAD, the standard American diet, which is loaded with way too much meat and way too much processed food, the SAD diet. That's what I was for 63 years, a SAD diet eater. But now that I'm a vegan, each and every day of my life, my carbon footprint, my personal carbon footprint is 1/4 of what it used to be when I was eating all that. That makes me feel better. I've always wanted to think of myself as an environmentalist, right? And then I was told by someone I love very much, is very near and dear to me, that actually you can't really call yourself an environmentalist if you eat meat. Not really, if you really look at it. And I was shocked to hear that. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm an environmentalist. I grow some of my own food, and I turn the lights out when I leave the room, and I'm doing things to help the environment because I want to be an environmentalist. Turns out the main thing that I could have been doing all those years was not eating meat. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the more I looked into it, the more research I did into the matter. I didn't just take their word for it. I had to look it up for myself, and all the research I've done and looked up proved them right. And so this is the best advice that I've ever received in my decision to become a vegan, and what I call a clean vegan, someone who eats not just plants and mushrooms and no meat or dairy or seafood, but whole foods. Okay, no extra salt, no extra sugar, no extra oil. We don't even use oil in our cooking, none of that, because it's not a whole food. We just eat whole foods, fruits and vegetables, grains, beans, and mushrooms. And boom, just like that, I became at least 4 times more of an environmentalist than I ever was before. Okay, so I used to be a member of Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy. I thought that was being a good environmentalist. If you eat meat, not really. If you really care about the environment, don't eat it. And it would be the subject of a whole nother video to help explain what I've learned about how it's not just about being an environmentalist, it's about protecting your own body and your own health. And that's a subject of a whole nother video, as I say, but I may go ahead and do one on that too. Processed foods also, let's get into that a little bit more too. The more foods are processed, all that energy that's used in extracting the oil out of the food, and they take wheat and they extract out everything good, and they leave behind just white flour, which is the equivalent of sugar. So everything you eat, donuts, bread, all that stuff, it becomes sugar instantly. It's got a high glycemic index, and it becomes sugar, blood sugar, instantly when you eat it, and it's about the same as eating actually pure sugar. It's no good. It's not good for you at all. It causes all kinds of problems. Meat causes insulin resistance. It's the source of diabetes. Okay, people think it's sugar. Sugar makes matters worse, but meat is the underlying source of why someone has insulin resistance in the first place, and it's from the oil and the saturated fats. Again, that's the subject of a whole nother video. I'll get into that though. We'll do that sometime. But just the cost of processing foods and then shipping them a long distance, that's not good for the environment either, okay? So just real quickly, some of the documentaries that I watched, and I highly recommend if you want to see some of the evidence for all of these things that I'm saying, would be Forks Over Knives, the documentary, The Game Changers, excellent documentary, talks about how professional athletes, some of the world's leading professional athletes, are vegan. The whole idea that you need animal protein is absolutely ludicrous. It's untrue, totally untrue. You don't need eggs. You don't need any of that stuff. Dairy, It's awful, actually. It's awful for you. Cowspiracy is another great documentary. What the Health, Plant Pure Nation, Eating You Alive. These are all excellent documentaries you should take a look at if you want to be honest about it and take a look and see what the evidence says. I personally like the podcast on YouTube called it's from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM. It's called the Exam Room Podcast with Chuck Carroll, with the host Chuck Carroll. They have over 500, maybe 700 episodes, and they have medical doctors and scientists on the show regularly. They talk about the latest. Also, Dr. Michael Greger and Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, which is pretty much the model for how we eat. It talks about how you eat whole grains and a lot of beans for fiber and protein, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, mushrooms, a little bit of particular seeds and nuts for your omega-3 fatty acids, just a little bit. You don't need much. And that's all covered in Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, which is really good. And he's on YouTube also. And all these doctors have books that you can read if you'd rather get your information that way. And they've all been heavily published in the scientific literature. So if you want to read scientific papers, knock yourself out. It's all right there. All right, so I want to go to the final area here. Another thing you can do if you want to be a good environmentalist and the way you eat is to eat invasive species. Invasive species may be impossible to eradicate, but that doesn't mean you can't at least cut them down a little bit by eating them. And I'm going to just go over a list of how many are there here? About maybe 15 or more of invasive species that live in Florida, where I live, that you can eat. They're all edible. Now, word of caution about this. A lot of these, you can only eat a specific part of the plant, and in some cases you have to prepare it a specific way. I urge caution before you eat any of these. Look it up, do your research, figure out the right way to eat them, the safe way to eat them. But these are all invasive species from somewhere else in the world that have gone wild, growing all over Florida, and you can eat them. And this is just a partial list. There are many more than this just in Florida. And there are many other species around the United States and around the world. The entire world right now is inundated with invasive species. So here's just the list, a quick list that I was able to put together just for Florida. You got your multiflora rose, Japanese barberry, watercress, Japanese honeysuckle, field garlic, daylily. Field garlic is also called wild onions. Daylily, water hyacinth, Japanese knotweed, dandelion, and I've seen dandelion for sale in Whole Foods in the vegetable in the produce section. Kudzu actually grows in northern Florida. Purslane, alligator weed, tropical chickweed, wild taro, Brazilian pepper. Some of the taros are toxic. In fact, that's what I said before. Definitely make sure you're careful and you know what you're doing before you eat any of these plants. Okay, I think that's about it. I just wanted to go over that a little bit. It's near and dear to my heart, both for my wanting to be a good environmentalist and take care of the planet, but also for my own personal health. Maybe I'll get into that one in another future video. I hope this is helpful for y'all. And little side track here from normal gardening video, but it's very much related, and it's part of the reason why we grow food forests. So have fun with your gardens, everybody. Y'all take care and happy gardening.